May we all stand to salute the flag? Of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Yes, Charlie, you're by yourself again. That's okay. You might be alone, but you are never truly alone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, viewers, citizens, and friends. Today is the 5th of December, and we are starting the Legislative Affairs Committee meeting. Before us, we have a motion for Bob Haas regarding the enforcement of city ordinances as it pertains to storefront signage and advertisement. Councillor Haas, if you would.
Thank you, Councillor. I've had this in for a while, this motion. Again, it pertains to signage and just the interpretation of the various zoning laws we have. As we all know, as far as the front of the facade, it can only be 38% coverage. In some places in Revere, it's 90%, 80%. So I'd like to have that enforced, basically. You know, and basically, no person shall place or cause to be placed in any public way or upon any sidewalk of the city, any lumber, coal, iron, trucks, bale, boxes, crates, tasks. Basically, you cannot put anything on public way. And A-frames are allowed. When I was mayor, I used to go on the city and pick them up, as stupid as it may seem, because no one's forcing the issue. So what this issue is basically to have the police department and the health department and all the various departments that can enforce public laws. And basically that's it. Very simple motion, and you know.
Anyone else? So, to you, Councillor Haas, is there anybody on the floor that wishes to speak? Councillor Granasso?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's worthy of consideration to do what the Councillor Haas has suggested. I think strongly that all too often we mention how wonderful it is going down Main Street in Melrose. And that's a premise of what could be in Revere, because we are beautifying Revere Broadway. And so signage in front of these places of business is certainly very important to the business owner, but it's also important to the community to make certain that they're placed in a fashion that is presentable. I mean, and I think in very strongly, as we see a lot of a diversity appearing within the community, that no matter what nationality is on there, I think English should be the broadest point of placement on these signage, because basically speaking, we're an English-speaking country, and all the rest is secondary. So I think it's important upon us to emphasize that with these new businesses, and we should have some sort of game plan going forward with how to present ourselves in the business community and give a sense of direction, because these business owners will be more than happy to abide by that, I'm sure, because they're willing to participate in the process. So why not make it in conformity of what appears? All we have to do is just take a little venture to Main Street in Melrose, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's absolutely a wonderful place to visit based on the storefront properties, the way it's conducted and the way they're held. So I think we can do the same in Revere, and I think Councillor Haas has the right idea in that, and certainly the A-frames and all over the place aren't necessary to promote business. We're all for promoting business, but we also have to be mindful that the sidewalk is a public sidewalk. It's not a sidewalk for the benefit of the business owner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else wish to speak? With that said, Councillor Haas, I had spoken to after sending emails to you, I had spoken to both the Director of Inspector Services, Nick Catanazzo, as well as the Chief. What he had potted on to me was that the majority of these issues that you speak of are under the guise of Benny DeCristoforo in the building department. There have been minimal complaints. In fact, he said probably less than 10 that he could actually think of in the past 2 to 3 years time frame. The majority of the issues have to do with enforcement, and that would be the enforcement body. But I mean, what he had said in the future, just pick up the phone and give them a call when you find an issue, and they'll deal with it accordingly.
Mr. Chairman, I think the various departments should get together. DPW, the Board of Health, Inspectional Service, and the Police Department. You know, in Revere, there's trucks all over the city that are illegal trucks. All right, no one knows how to enforce it. This issue here, you get on Revere Street and you look at some of the buildings down there, it's more than 35% to 80% of coverage, and that's illegal. I think the mayor should convene a meeting with all the various people and tell them what the plan should be in Revere. Okay, that's all I'm saying, you know. Right in the right direction, etc.
I perfectly understand what you're saying. In fact, I ended up going around taking pictures of many of these places that you were concerned about. And when you do look at it, it's, you do have some facades like Lamberto's, which doesn't have a problem, but yet when you look at some of the other ones going down past Woody's, you do come into these issues. But then you've got other places like Stonehurst where you don't have that problem. So this one right here, which is a new dental clinic, I don't know, this is past that that perimeter that's set by ordinance. I don't know if I would scrutinize this particular place, just because it's truly, conditional. If you look at it, it's neat, it's clean, and I'm doing this for the camera, and it doesn't look out of style for the city, so to speak. But then you have other places that I think what Arthur was talking about that clearly, like this place right here, that illustrates what you're talking about, where it's literally opaque, you can't see anything. But again, that comes down to getting the department heads involved in this by people actually complaining. But is this the most important thing for them is the question. When you've got, and it's an important thing, but when you have houses that have tenants up to 20 in a 2-bedroom apartment, that's more of an issue to them. We had a couple of shootings over the past week, and they're dealing with those. We had a couple of overdoses, and they're dealing with those. And I agree with you, it's important, but the hierarchy of needs are clearly noted.
I agree with council with that, okay? The issue is if we're trying to improve the quality of life in Revere, it's got to start someplace, okay? I understand what you're talking about as far as the overcrowding within the various areas in Revere. It's obvious. You just go by and look at Revere Street, Lower Revere Street. There's 7 mailboxes on one house. And I think we have to check those out. And I agree with you. This is not a major priority, but it could be a good start, getting everyone together, for they all know what the ordinances are. Yeah.
Councillor Guanasso.
I don't want to belabor a subject, Mr. Chairman, but obviously what Councillor Haas has also alluded to, we don't have to involve the police department. We certainly have inspectional services that can take care of this. And this is, I'm not talking about a lot of work here. This is just driving around in the vehicles that they do in their daily chores, and they see certain violations, they have to address them. Now, there's one that's driving me crazy on the end of, at the intersection of American Legion Highway and Revere Street. And that other, at the end of it where Brown Circle is, they have a sign there for Boy Scouts. I mean, right on in the medium strip. That is not what the intended use of that median strip is. We spent a fortune cleaning up that area. We don't want it. And I see another going down further, going adjacent to Blanchard's, I see a sign at a pole. The child is a super child in some school in Boston. I mean, I'm applauding the child, but why do you have to put it on a pole? So these are the types of things that I'm saying that deteriorate the fabric of our community. They bring us down because these are not acceptable in other cities and towns. Why should they be allowed to do it here? This is public property. Their sense of advertisement doesn't belong on there, simply. And I think inspectional services is the right force. I understand police departments inundated with work, and I wouldn't want to labor any further on them, but certainly inspectional services can handle this.
Councilor Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't get to see that picture, the first one you showed, but were they just signs, the whole window was covered with signs? I mean, that's a public safety hazard, too. I mean, nobody knows what's going on inside the building, and yeah, I know what that is, yeah. Well, you know, that's they're only allowed to have, one sign. They have to come before us to get that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that's a simple, easy violation for the inspection services. So I'm sure it's a good motion by Councillor Haas that just on a public safety issue and for the safety of the owner. He could be getting robbed or whatever, and nobody outside would know what's going on. So I would hope that the inspection services will get on this. Thank you.
Councilor Haas, would you feel the disposition that a letter go to the department heads requesting that they have more diligence regarding this issue?
Mr. Chairman, I would request the mayor convene a meeting. And it's coming from the mayor down to the department heads. And I think you get a little more response from that, you know, if the committee accepts.
Oh, it's accepted. I just think that we can, from speaking to to Nick Catanazzo, it would be also probably best if, when we see these things, to get a list and possibly send it to him and then have his people go out and obviously address it. Madam Clerk, do you think it would be possible if we send a letter? Correct. Madam Clerk just pointed out to us that we can do see, click, fix, which would also help. So for the viewing public, when you see something of this nature where you find an establishment that's cluttered with signage that is, in your opinion, inappropriate or just in a manner that doesn't suit the area, go click fix and deal with it in that manner. The one thing I do want to point out, though, and we have to be cognizant of it, you know, it's people have a right to put other languages on their building, and in particular, I believe that they should do it with English so that we can attract more people to their business. But just to note that. As far as Councilor Zambuto's issue relative to the charter review, it appears that there's really not a lack of enthusiasm to enjoin on that. I'm going to ask that gets filed, Madam Clerk. And as far as the ordinance regarding the drones, I'm waiting for a response from Paul Capizzi at this point. I'm sure he has other things that are far more pressing than to deal with this at the moment. So if there's any questions or any concerns, I'll adjourn the Legislative Affairs Council meeting. If anybody has any questions, it's adjourned.